This message is called The Proof of Life. I want to talk to you. When I say that giving will give you life, that giving is something that sets us free and blesses us in incredible ways, let me say this. Are those just the words of a preacher, or can you actually prove that? Okay, now I'm going to prove it to you in this message. And I'm going to prove it to you in two ways. First, are the words of Jesus. If you believe Jesus, the words of Jesus. The second way I want to prove it is through research. Modern volumes and volumes of the latest research that have been done on this issue. Now, I want to begin with the research. And there's a book that has been published. It's called Why Good Things Happen to Good People. And the subtitle is The Exciting New Research That Proves the Link Between Doing Good and Living a Longer, Happier Life. And the book is by Dr. Stephen Post and Jill Niemark. Now, I'm going to read you a few of the excerpts from this book. Now, this is from hundreds of scientific studies. This is not one study. This is a compilation of hundreds of scientific studies. And here is some excerpts from the book. It says, the remarkable bottom line of the science of love is that giving protects health overall twice as much as aspirin protects against heart disease. If giving weren't free, pharmaceutical companies could herald the discovery of a new stupendous drug called Give Back instead of Prozac and run TV ads about love. Listen, giving protects the giver at all ages and stages of life. They say only the good die young. Of course, sometimes the good do die young, and we all eventually face sickness from causes that are completely beyond our control or responsibility. But the remarkably good news is that over the past 10 years, we have about 500 serious scientific studies that demonstrate the power of unselfish love to enhance health. And here are some of the exciting, fresh scientific findings. So let me give you some of the specifics. This is the first one. Giving in high school predicts good physical and mental health all the way into late adulthood, a time interval of over 50 years. They had a group of people that they tracked for over 50 years. And some were givers and some were not. And what they found was when people began to give in high school, it affected their mental and physical health all the way into later life. So I was in a restaurant this week, and a woman came up to me. She recognized me. She said, hey, Pastor Jimmy, I was at church last week, loved your message. And I said, well, thanks. She said, well, I love to give. She said, I'm just a giver. And she said, I love to tithe and I love to give. And she said, and she didn't know what I was going to preach. And she said, every time we walk into church, I take our giving envelope and I hand it to my son and I make him give it. And he's always like, Mom, whatever. And he walks over to the offering container and puts the envelope in there. And she said, I've done that for years with him because I want to train him to be a giver. And she said, I noticed it was either last week or the week before that he had her envelope to drop in the offering container along with his own $20 bill. And he dropped it on the offering container. And she said that week he got a raise at work. And she said, I know the Lord was just encouraging him to begin to give. So let me give you another of the findings. Listen to this finding now. This comes from these studies on giving. Giving reduces adolescent depression and suicide risk. So when you teach your child to give, you are improving their physical health and mental health for the rest of their life. And you are reducing their chances of being depressed or being suicidal. Now, here is a study that came out. I'll get back to this study in just a minute. This is a study that came out in December, and it says joy from giving lasts much longer than joy from getting, study shows. Now, this is young people again. This is college-age people that they did a study on. Mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, listen now. Listen to what this shows, because it's extremely important to your young person. This I'm reading now. Have you ever noticed that your enjoyment in a repeated activity or event decreases over time, no matter how wonderful it is? When this happens, you're experiencing what researchers called hedonic adaptation. The joy of having our own desires met is always fleeting. Perhaps surprisingly, however, giving to others creates a more lasting happiness. If you want to sustain happiness over time, past research tells us that we need to take a break from what we're currently consuming and experience something new. says study co-author Ed O'Brien of the University of Chicago Booth School of Business in a release from the Association for Psychological Science. Our research reveals that the kind of thing may matter more than assumed. Repeated giving, even in identical ways to others, may continue to feel relatively fresh and relatively pleasurable the more that we do it. In the first experiment, 96 college student participants were given $5 each day for 5 days. The students were told to spend the money on exactly the same thing each day. Some of the participants randomly assigned to spend the money on themselves, while others were assigned to spend the money on others. Maybe an online donation to the same charity each day, or even cash placed in a tip at the same cafe. Participants self-reported at the end of each day how they felt about the money they had spent and how they rated their overall happiness. The results of the daily spending challenge showed a clear pattern. While participants began with very similar levels of happiness, the students who had spent the money on themselves felt decreasingly happy over the 5-day period. Conversely, participants who gave their money to someone else, however, continued to feel the same level of joy on the 5th day as they did on the first day. In the second experiment, 502 participants played 10 rounds of a word puzzle game online. For each round won, they earned a nickel, which they could either keep or donate to a favorite charity. Participants self-reported after each round the degree of joy they felt from winning. As in the first experiment, those who gave their winnings to others retained higher levels of happiness for longer periods than those who kept their winnings for themselves. And so when the research says that giving, when you teach your child to give, they're going to be happier, they're going to have better mental health and better physical health that's going to last for the rest of their lives. Let me go back to this woman that I met this week in the restaurant. What a wise mother. So let me say something to moms and dads. I know you love your kids. You love your kids incredibly, and I would never question that. Sometimes, especially when you have a scar from your childhood, as a parent, you'll say something like this: I want to give my children the advantages that I didn't have. And you mean well, And I wanted to give, Karen and I wanted to give our children some advantages that we didn't have. And what happens sometimes is that children become professional receivers. Mom and dad are on this program and they think, if I can just give my kids everything, then they'll grow up and they'll be successful. If you don't teach your children to give, you're putting them at a disadvantage. Mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, your children will not be as blessed when they don't give. And that's not my words, that's the research. Children will become happier. They need to learn. And giving, by the way, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about helping others. I'm talking about going down the street and mowing that woman's yard who can't mow her own yard. I'm talking about helping someone who's disadvantaged. A wealthy family that I know, they spend every holiday in a food kitchen serving the poor. They take their children. What they're concerned about is, because our children come from a wealthy family, we don't want them to grow up and be brats, entitled brats. And we want them to know that there are people that are not as advantaged in them, and they are responsible to help take care of those people. And they're good kids, they're a good family. So I'm saying to you, mom and dad, more than giving your children all the blessings that you want to give them, though I know that you want to give them, the most important thing that you do for your child is to raise them to be blessed by God. Somebody say amen. They need Jesus Christ to be the Lord of their lives. They need to be led according to the Bible, not legalistically, but spiritually. And they need to know that the world is not about them getting what they want.